Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I want to talk about this new Strange #1. So this is Strange, the comic book #1. It's titled as Legacy number 417, which is basically counting all of the previous Doctor Strange issues and everything else that had gone into this, and probably some limited series and some other things as well. I have no idea what all is going into this list. But this comic is basically revealing Clea as the new Doctor Strange, or as the new Sorceress Supreme, or Sorcerer Supreme. They kind of fool around on a lot of those different titles. And this comic is getting some anger. It's getting people, claiming this is another case of, Marvel gender swapping a main character. In this case, Dr. Stephen Strange is now Clea. And a lot of people who don't really know the past of the characters making a lot of assumptions. I've seen people posting, and even some videos talking about how this was a minor character, a bit character that Marvel's shoving up into the spotlight for gender reasons, for diversity reasons, and none of that's accurate. In many ways, I'm just going to lay it out this way. I think this storyline, the idea that Doctor Strange is dead, and basically Clea has taken his mantle, and she's going to use those powers and that status to figure out a way to resurrect her love, Stephen Strange. I think that's a good storyline. I think it's a good idea. I think that it's logical. It fits the characters. We'll get into the history. So I like this idea. I like this storyline. I have no issues with Clea being the Sorcerer Supreme for a period of time. I think it's fine. The comic itself, though, this is by Jed MacKay, who has a really good run going at Marvel, doing Moon Knight right now. He did Black Cat. He's done a bunch of kind of one-offs, and did the Death of Doctor Strange series, which was okay. But it was not the best of his work, but it was solid. Moon Knight, again, I think he's doing a really good job with that, and Black Cat fit the character. He did some interesting thing there. This is drawn by Marcelo Ferreira. And this is one of those cases where there's actually a penciler and an inker. So Don Ho doing the inking, with Roberto Apoggi is doing the inking. This comic is awful. Just bluntly, I'll throw it out there. This is a truly awful comic, both in style and in story. And it's surprising because I do like Jed MacKay. I think he's a good writer, and I like this premise. And I want to stress that piece because a lot of people are reviewing this comic, really tearing apart the premise, and I think the premise is fine. So to for just a moment, humor me here, to give you some background on Clea. Clea dates back quite a long time. She's, I think, early 60s. Clea first came into the picture. And the character was, basically is half Faltine, something that comes up in this comic. And you might say, what is the Faltine? Well, the Faltinians are extra-dimensional energy beings born from pure magic. And it's been part of the Doctor Strange legacy here for quite some time. Her mother is Umar, who is a sister of Dormammu, a classic villain for Doctor Strange, and that's how Clea came into the picture. So basically, very kind of early on, she came in, she was curious about what Stephen Strange is up to, and in really not the most original story, but kind of a one that's been used a lot, she winds up falling for Strange through his heroism and bravery. And so basically over the years, Clea would kind of assist Stephen Strange. She'd show up in the comic and she'd help him on whatever was going on with Strange's life, him fighting Baron Mordo and others. And ultimately, it was clear it was kind of like many things in the 60s. It was a romantic relationship that they didn't quite ever fully consummate or go all in on, but it was just one of those, it's a dame that likes a guy, and that was how a lot of the comics in the 60s were treating it, especially under Marvel. So Dormammu was for a while banished and gone. Umar was released from exile, and then that created another conflict for Clea and for Strange. And so they continued to go back and forth with Clea, saying, why don't you come be my consort? And then why don't I actually, there's a time when she came to Earth, so then she was kind of studying under Strange to be kind of her new disciple. And And she would show up in the Defenders. She was a character that was pretty consistent in the storyline. And then she would, turn evil for a while and they'd fight. And then she'd turn good again. Then she'd say, why don't you come hang out with me? And then he said no. And then he said, why don't you hang out with me? And she said no. And this went on for a while. And then eventually they decided they were going to get married. But, they can't possibly figure out the rules of marriage. So they are not legally married, but they're magically married. So they formed a ring that was actually one ring, but connected together through all eternity. And so they basically were a couple for quite a while. But then Stephen was a ladies' man. So then that made her mad and she took off and then eventually they nullified the relationship. So right at the end, kind of as we come into the death of Stephen Strange by Jed MacKay, they set up this whole business where, Strange needed Mephisto's help to save reality. Mephisto did his classic no more day trick and said, I'll take away the memory of you from Clea. He said, yes. And then later he learned she was still in love with him. And so that was bad. And then Stephen died. And when he died, all the memories in this spell was broken. She remembered him once again, and that's how we got to where we are here. So now Clea has the power, and she is determined to save her love from the bonds of death. And that brings us to this comic. So I find that pretty cool. I think again this is a storyline that's been going on largely since the mid '60s. I think that how we got here makes a lot of sense. I have no problem with the setup, and I think that this idea of Clea having his powers, it fits a number of different pieces, storylines that were set up even back in the 70s. So if you're looking at this going, it's a woke comic doing woke stuff with woke, no, that just shows you do not know much about comics. All that said, this is a bad comic, like I said earlier. So when you get into it, like the first 2 pages, so first off, there's, I'll highlight specifically what I disliked about it. Number 1, I'm sure the artist has given it their all, but Clea's face and expression and just entire thing like radically changes from panel to panel. There is no consistency at all to the style. And at times the drawings are just absurdly poor. Particularly since you cannot blame it on a penciler, the person doing all the art in one, just doing it quickly digital. This was actually inked this way. So I don't know, I've seen some other work by the penciler, by Marcelo, and it's not nearly this bad. So I don't know if the artwork was just butchered all to hell with the inking, but that is massively distracting as Clea's rendered just bizarre throughout all this, and it is just awful. Everybody looks bad, but Clea in particular, who is the star of the book, looks just awful. And then the second kind of problem here is the writing is just painfully Twitter cutesy, and we really haven't seen too much of this from Jed MacKay, other than Black Cat would talk like this, and to be honest, if you just replaced Clea with Black Cat, it would kind of fit. But that the dialogue fit Black Cat, it fit that character. Now we're left to wonder: is this just how Jed MacKay writes women? I can't believe that's true. But from the by the hoary hosts of Hoggoth, I am literally opening the door to this running joke about coffee. And the coffee is bad in this dimension, and let's go get some coffee. And why don't we go get some coffee in the dark dimension? And let's go get extra mid-dimensional coffee. We need a proper dark dimension roast. And like, Jesus Christ, it's painful. It's just painful. And then Clea has a pretty interesting, mission here to go save Stephen. And she says so with the, I have no wish for the power of Victor, because Dr. Doom shows up. This was Stephen's design, his last wish. And so, she kind of is going on about how, she doesn't want this power. She didn't want the title of Sorcerer Supreme. She, just doesn't, this isn't what she wants. And her mission is to go, resurrect him, bring him back to life. That's some of the panels. In other panels, she is mocking Doom. She's bragging that, with just a bizarre grin on her face, that she's the Sorcerer Supreme and you should need to respect her. And Just again, the dialogue is all over the place. Very, very bizarre. She goes from sounding like a British, actress to kind of just the black cat, just bizarre, just absolutely bizarre. The dialogue is one of the complaints I've had about Bendis is that every character sounds about the same. That's what we have here. Every character sounds the same. It's hard to feel good about this character. This character is supposed to be heartbroken and determined. And instead, the character is quipping. The character is bragging. Page after page, she's like, I am not human. I have warlord blood in my veins. I want what is mine. I will suffer to know. Like, there's just this haughty nonsense. And it just absolutely, absolutely bizarre. The comic mainly consists of really kind of a setup. And in fairness, the first 2 pages feel pretty good. In the first 2 pages, it's stormy. It looks like some bad stuff's going on. Clea is kind of on the ropes a little bit. There's a new villain called the Harvest Man who looks pretty sinister. And he's got a bunch of crazy keys. And he says, you will not resurrect Stephen Strange. And that's great. And then we move into, Clea is hungover or something. And Doom shows up and they trade quips. And Clea is just thoroughly unlikable through this period. And then Wong is hungover and then they need to go get coffee. And so they go to a black market called the Shrouded Bazaar. And then they spend a lot of time here just kind of randomly talking about some stuff that they've done. And even with panels of them saying, well, we took care of these villains, the Blasphemy Cartel, they'll not be back. And then literally in the next page, and this is where the word literally actually does apply, they say, they're back. And then they shoot some people. Just again, bizarre. Clea doesn't behave or come across like Clea here. Clea comes across as simultaneously angry and reckless and strange, and maybe when I say strange, not in a good way, not like the character's name. It's just a thoroughly bizarre comic. She's at times haughty and angry, and at times sad and smug. It's just all across the wall. Again, the art is thoroughly bizarre. Turning Wong into a constant drunk didn't particularly come across well. I mean, even there's this scene where they're drinking wine together and the wine is like up her nose, like she's drowning. Like, again, the drawing, whoever drew and colored this seemed like they had a vendetta against Marvel. This is just thoroughly, thoroughly bizarre. And so they have another conversation, more wine drinking. And finally, that leads to the bit of the action leads us back to the beginning, where somebody does crawl up from the ground, but it's not Stephen Strange. It's the corpse of Thunderstrike, and this Harvest Man behind him. So anyway, that's how it's done. Again, I'm troubled by this because I like the writer. I actually like the penciler. I think the penciler has done good work in the past. I don't know what's going on here, and I like the setup. I do like the concept of what this comic is. It's just the character is just bizarrely unpleasant, and the dialogue is painful. And even when you get close to the end of the book, they start doing kind of voiceover caption boxes where they repeat a lot of the stuff that happened earlier in the book. They repeat the same thing. Weird. Just a very, I cannot quite understand how we got to this part of the book. Doesn't make the hero sympathetic, doesn't make any of this stuff particularly pleasant. And this is a bad start. Now, I am 100% convinced that where this all leads, of course, is to the resurrection of Stephen Strange. They're not going to keep him dead for long. Zero people in Marvel stay dead for any length of time. So Stephen Strange is coming back. We do have a movie out in May. He's clearly going to be dead through the movie, just like, Spider-Man Peter Parker was in a coma in a hospital through that movie, because that makes a terrific amount of sense. But there was an opportunity here to build up Clea. Clea, as I mentioned, been around since the early 60s. as a pretty interesting, pretty compelling character, a character they haven't really done too much with in the last decade or so, that now there's a chance for her to step onto the stage and kind of, bring one of these legacy characters back to life. I think that's great. I ask for Marvel to do this all the time. Let's make these characters that already exist. Let's give them the spotlight. Do more with them. Clea is very interesting in what she brings to the table. This comic is not going to do it. So all apologies to the writer. Again, nothing personal to the writer or the creative team or anything like that. It was a swing and a miss, like a bad miss. And I'd really love to know what in the world is going on here with the art. But if you're looking to pick this up, I can't terribly recommend it. Even though I love the setup. I think it's a good idea. The pitch was great. The execution, yikes. So take it for what it's worth. So let me know what you think of this book. If you loved it, you hated it, you have no interest in reading it, please, I do urge people, if you're listening to the angry ranting videos about how this is woke 2.0 or whatever it happens to be, I would say I wish that was the problem, but no, I don't wish any of this. I wish for successful comics, what I wish for. This isn't going to do it. Anyway, thanks for listening.